We have just a few final details to iron out, and it's going very well. I'm very excited about where we are and the fact that we're going to be moving this forward.
Welcome back. That was the familiar face and voice of House Speaker Mike Johnson walking through hallways on Capitol Hill. It's a pretty frequent occurrence, discussing the emerging, potentially, or maybe not, framework for a Trump-backed budget and tax bill. Now, the Senate, Republicans, well, they're moving forward with a plan of their own. Will these be at cross purposes or ultimately unified? Well, that's what we're going to talk about, among other things. Political reporters one political reporter from NOTUS, Jasmine Wright, and Daniella Diaz, in a blessed sort of professional limbo, soon to be at NOTUS, join me now. Okay, before we get to the budget things, I want to show you this animation we have of two Time magazine covers. One from Trump 1.0 of Steve Bannon, then chief strategist. Show us that big glowering face of Steve Bannon. And then now, this week, roll it, control room, there it is, dissolving to Elon Musk behind the Resolute desk. Our Weijia Jiang asked the President of the United States about that today.
Is Time magazine still in business? I didn't even know that. Elon is doing a great job. He's finding tremendous fraud and corruption and waste. You see it with the USAID.
If you go to Trump Tower, you'll see framed Time magazine covers of Donald Trump. Many, many, many of them. Some of them real, some of them not real. He gave Time magazine a huge interview last fall.
Yeah, he was Time Person of the Year.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
He knows it's still in business and he cares.
Yeah.
The only reason we are having some fun with this is that there is only one major domo in the Trump White House, and it's President Trump. And anyone who finds themselves intentionally or unintentionally sitting in that position or portrayed to be sitting in that position or being portrayed as having the ultimate authority finds that person finds themselves at cross purposes and in the crosshairs of President Trump. This could be a dynamic for the Elon Musk relationship. Yes or no?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think it's fascinating because just about every single time that Trump is talking to reporters, he's getting at least one question about Elon Musk, about what he's done, whether he approves it, how much rope does Elon have, who is doing, is Elon acting on his instructions or is he acting on his own instructions? Kind of constant questions, not just to him, but also to Caroline Leavitt, to other officials within the government. So they know that reporters are interested in trying to see whether or not there is daylight in between these two really kind of massive ego men. Trump continues to say that things are okay, that he likes what Elon is doing, that Elon's going to do only what Trump allows him to do. But certainly, as one person close to Trump told me, that they feel like it might still be a kind of a ticking time bomb, even though people within the White House say, when you ask them, that they like Elon and they like what he's doing.
And Daniella, the president was asked today, will Elon show up at a podium and take questions? And Trump's like, oh, sure. I can't wait for that presser.
I mean, it's obvious that he's become not only the figurehead of the Trump administration, but also a Democratic boogeyman. He's become someone that we're seeing Democrats on Capitol Hill, or what I cover and where I go every day, the target of their attention. It's a really easy way for Democrats to be able to rally their voters ahead of, we don't talk about midterms yet, but it's figurative that Elon Musk is one of the people in this administration that we're seeing every single day on X posting against these federal agencies that he's trying to gut. We're seeing DOJ working. We're seeing Republicans speak about him and praise him, and Democrats attack him. I mean, it's the new boogeyman that we're seeing in this administration. Last administration, Steve Bannon. This administration, Elon Musk.
And there's a great question, and it's a very serious question, about why the associates of Elon Musk are basically plugging in to this federal IT infrastructure and what they're doing now that they're plugged in.
Yeah.
They have eyes on treasure troves of highly personal data on tens of millions of Americans. And for what purpose? The president was asked about that today. He was kind of, well, they don't really need all that access, but they have it anyway.
Yeah, I think that that's going to play really well in court when multiple people continue bringing these court cases, questioning why they have so much access and does it violate clearance laws and all these types of things. I was talking to one person.
Does it conform to ethics rules?
Exactly.
Are there conflicts of interest? Elon Musk has
they said earlier
more
this
than $1
week
billion
that
in
Elon
federal
Musk could look at that Elon Musk would be the one to decide whether or not there is a conflict of interest with all of the things that he owns. I was talking to one person at an agency for the federal government, and they're pretty high up. And I asked, do you know what they're doing with the information that they have now been able to glean from your agency? And they flat out said no. And so I think that there's questions about transparency, questions about the need for them to have such access, and really questions about what they are doing and what it's going to impact. But the fact is that they're doing things so quickly, people believe, that it's going to be difficult for not just reporters to catch up, but certainly the courts and Democrats.
Nobody
who want to
knows,
make them
and it's not clear how anyone is going to get to know. Daniella, I want to ask you about the conversations, because I promised the audience this, about the budget, the tax bill, Senate Republicans, House Republicans. What's your sense?
This is the biggest thing on Capitol Hill right now. It's become the biggest thing since Republicans got the trifecta, White House, House, Senate. And there's a clear disagreement taking place in real time between Senate Republicans and House Republicans. Speaker Mike Johnson wants one big, beautiful bill because Donald Trump wants one big, beautiful bill. Senate Republicans, led by Senator Lindsey Graham, the Budget Committee chairman, thinks that they need to have a quick win and has already moved forward on a budget resolution.
A smaller bill focused on border and other related matters.
No tax policies specifically in it. And to pay for this would be offset by a separate bill to pass through the process of budget reconciliation, which means they only need a simple majority. They don't need Democratic
Just 50 votes in the Senate, right?
But there's obviously real issues because in the House, which Caitlin obviously put very succinctly earlier on the show, they cannot afford to lose any votes, and House Freedom Caucus members want to cut spending, and they will not support legislation that won't do that. And Speaker Mike Johnson is going to have to raise the debt limit and acknowledge that today because that is a major priority for Donald Trump. So with all these different parts that are playing in real time, Johnson is trying to keep all of his conference together. Senate Republicans are saying, hey, we're going to move forward. We're not waiting for you. So they're going to work through the weekend to figure this out.
And Jasmine, for those in the audience, you're like, oh my gosh, it all sounds like a bunch of Washington gobbledygook.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't sort all this stuff out.
Sure.
If you are interested, ladies and gentlemen, in whether or not there'll be taxes on tips, taxes on overtime, taxes on Social Security benefits, maybe for your parents or someone you know, this is going to be decided here.
Yeah.
Whether it's in or out, how it gets happen, that's where this matters.
Yeah, that's where this matters. And this is the fundamental place that Republicans want Donald Trump to kind of make some decisions for them. And he really, at this point, hasn't. He's told them basically yesterday in that meeting, you guys decide on your own.
4 hours at the White House.
4 hours. But he said, he walked in and said, you guys decide on your own. And then come back to me when you have an answer. They didn't have an answer by the time that they left. And so I think that they're really wanting Donald Trump to decide whether or not it's going to be one or two bills, what they want in the first bill if it's going to be two bills, what can be in the second bill. And he's really saying, you guys decide. So it's kind of a case of pass the hot potato for Republicans, both at the White House and in Congress, when it comes to the next steps going forward. But they're going to have to make some decisions and make them very quickly because we know that government funding is going to run out in March.
And
real quick.
Not only that, Senate Republicans are wearing a Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
So
dinner tonight,
and a lot of things are going to happen during that conversation.
Remember, in Washington, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Jasmine Wright, Daniella Diaz, thank you so much.
Thank you.